Now, let's go to Virginia. And joining us now is Margaret Kastleberg. She's been on our show before. Republican. She's running for the House of Delegates. Let me tell you, there's no math for Kirk Cox to maintain his majority without a victory by Margaret Kastleberg. She's running in Richmond's 73rd district. That's part of Henrico. This is the seat that had been held by Debbie Rodman. Rodman now running for State Senate against Republican Siobhan Donovan. And Donovan's going to win that race. I'm predicting that. Donovan, probably one of the best Republican candidates this side of Jill Vogel in the Senate. And she is going to win that seat. That's going to be the end of Rodman. She's going to go down in flames. But this is a seat that the Republicans have to win. And Kastleberg, in a very tight race. They're being outspent. So George Soros just dumps in Margaret another $650,000 into Virginia. This is the money that's been dumped in by Bloomberg. This is the money that's on top of the money that's been dumped in by quid pro quo dark money, Michael Bills and Clean Virginia, which we've now seen to be a complete and utter ruse. It has nothing to do with clean energy. It's about electing a left-wing majority. We saw that with Sertaloin and his wife, Sonia Smith. And you have to sign a quid pro quo. So you got all that going on. Margaret, with all this outside money coming in, how do you combat this?
Well, we are on the ground, and thank you, John, for having me on today. And you've pretty much set the landscape of there is a lot of money coming in from out of state, from people who really don't know anything about Henrico or Richmond, and all it is about consolidating power. And we are combating it by being on the ground. We've been working hard since the beginning. I do have Republican support, which is my opponent likes to, he's put out lots of mailers that I have Republican support, and that's bad. And I'm not sure why a Republican having Republican support is news.
It's ridiculous.
It's in the caucus is supporting me. I'm grateful for that. But we are focused on Virginia, on raising money in Virginia, and addressing the issues that matter to our community here in Henrico and that affect Virginia. We're not running on a national agenda. We're not running on, we're not receiving huge sums of money from single interest, special interest groups like Planned Parenthood, which, you referenced that, or labor unions. We're running on a platform of many issues, and actually feeling good reception to our message out in the community, and knocking on lots and lots of doors and continuing that, have been for 6 months, and that's how we're combating it, with substance and facts.
Okay, so look, there's a new poll that just came out, the Virginia Commonwealth University poll, VCU poll, and this is showing that the generic ballot, they just basically polled adults, which you think would favor the Democrats, because this thing is not weighed. It's just like adults that are registered voters. And they found that the generic ballot between Republicans and Democrats for the House of Virginia is basically split evenly 50-50. Now, this comes on the heels of the fake poll that Christopher Newport University and the Wasson Center puts out by witch doctor Ruth Bitcover, who says, I guess, the Democrats have a 15% majority and they're going to win all 100 seats, or whatever nonsense that they put out, so that your people don't work, which is the whole object of that witch fake poll they put out. I know this poll went around your caucus. You got a chance to look at it. What was your reaction to it?
I'll be honest, John. There are lots of different polls out there, and what we're taking away from all of them is that it's going to be a very close race. So we are focused on getting out the vote, and again, just continuing to work our plan of me meeting with as many folks as possible, We don't have special interest groups out knocking on doors like my opponent does, because we don't think that's very effective. We think it's more effective for me to be out there and folks in my family. So, again, we do think it's going to be very, very close, but not focusing on the poll numbers specifically.
Well, one thing that they said in the poll is that a majority of Virginians favor an increase in the federal minimum wage. And obviously, minimum wage is going to be one of the issues, if you're elected, that comes up in front of you, Mary Margaret. Give us your kind of thoughts on that.
Well, I believe that free markets are the best, way to have success for the most amount of people. I believe that rather than focusing on minimum wage, which is a training wage, an entry-level wage, and the discussion when you're talking about $15 minimum wage, just to throw something out there, tends to be confused and used interchangeably with a living wage. They are not the same thing, nor should they be the same thing. I believe that the focus should be on what do we need to do, what training programs can we offer, what supports can we offer to our educational systems, community college systems, and others to move people from entry-level minimum wage type jobs to advance so that they can, earn more money and be able to sustain themselves, support themselves and their family. And, the minimum wage discussion, again, I feel like it's, just trying to, it's really not being genuine about what the issue is. I think it's great that many private companies or publicly traded companies have come out and said, we are setting internally our own minimum wage. We're setting it, Walmart's done that. There are many companies that have come out and put out their own minimum wage, which I think is great, and I think that's the way to go. I do think that there's room for minimum wage to increase, as inflation and cost of living increases, that makes sense, but setting an arbitrary level of minimum wage at the state or federal level, I don't think makes sense.
Okay, so you're not in favor, but of course there is a federal minimum wage. I always get into this with people because they say, well, I think the market should do it, but we do have a minimum wage.
Yes.
Are you for just getting rid of the minimum wage?
No. I'm just saying, just having let's say it's $7.25 an hour. I don't, think that should just be, okay, well, now we're going to bump it to 15. I just don't think that works.
You just think there should be a minimum wage, but you think going from like whatever we are, $7.25 to 15, it's just like right. Maybe you step it up, but like you said, you want to keep growing the economy so that companies, like I own a company, right? We can't hire people for today for what we did during the Obama years. We just can't do it. The right. market is too tight. Wages have gone up. And so, look, what a company tries to do is maximize their bottom line. So they're not going to pay people money they don't have to. But if you want to get good employees in a tight job market like we have now, you've got to pay them more, right? It's just a reality of how the capitalist system works. We're with Mary Margaret Kastleberg, Republican. She is running for a House of Delegates member that is in Henrico, Tough District, 73rd, and she is up the election just in about 12 days, right? A week from Tuesday. 12 days, a week from Tuesday is when it's coming up. That is the seat of Debbie Rodman, one-termer who is now running for the Senate, the state Senate against Siobhan Donovan. We've already predicted Siobhan's going to win that race. Okay, Mary Margaret, let me ask you a couple other things here. One thing is, in this poll that was done by Virginia Commonwealth University yesterday, they took a couple issues, and minimum wage being one of them. Another one that they talked about was legalized gambling in Virginia, which is going to be a big deal for a lot of people. No, a lot of Republicans just seem uncomfortable with it. I cannot, for the life of me, figure this out, Margaret. I know last time we talked, you wanted studies done or whatever. But look, gambling is all around us. It's at MGM in Maryland. It's at Hollywood Park just outside of Leesburg in West Virginia. It's at Dover Downs. It's at Ocean Downs. It's at Harrington up the Eastern Shore. And so every time I go to these casinos, whether I want to gamble on football or whatever I do, half the cars in the lot have Virginia plates, which means the money is going to Virginia. So this poll done was pretty compelling. It says that a strong majority of Virginians want legalized gambling, which would be baseball, football, basketball, and casino gambling. This is going to be one of the biggest issues that comes to your desk if you're elected. How do you stand on it based on the numbers that have just come out?
Well, again, I'm not necessarily paying attention to that poll number, but I'm not opposed to legalized gambling fundamentally. What I'd like to see is kind of a comprehensive approach to it where it's strategic. I don't think my view of gambling is not to have it on every street corner in every part of Virginia. I would like to see, especially in areas that are struggling economically, where industry and manufacturing have left those areas, I'd like to see, casino destination type places there, as I think it can, have great economic benefit in terms of jobs and development and drawing people, out of the urban crescent in a lot of ways to other parts of the state, which really have a lot to offer. So that's, again, I've got a lot more studying to do on it, but at this stage, that's really what I'm looking at, and I'm interested to see more details about it. But I do think it's an opportunity in, again, for the certain parts of the state that are struggling because their traditional methods of economic viability have moved overseas or moved out of state.
Right. So, like, one of the proposals is that we'd have casinos in those areas that you talked about, Bristol on the border, southwest Virginia, maybe Danville, whose economy has been hammered by the delineation of all the textiles and everything else. Danville would be one. Certainly the Hampton area would be another one. That's just three. Perhaps somewhere else in southeast Virginia, and then obviously there'd be one in Richmond. There would have to be one there. So it sounds like you're open to the idea.
Yes.
Okay. How did Democrats explain this one? Let me just ask you this. We're with Margaret Kastleberg, Republican House of Delegates candidate for the 73rd District that's in Henrico in Richmond. So how do the Democrats explain the booming economy in Virginia, the fact that from an economic outlook in this poll, the vast majority of Virginians are saying that the economy is excellent or great. Excellent or good. 65% of people saying the Virginia economy is excellent or good. Think of that, Mary Margaret. 65%, that's 2 out of 3 people say, hey, the economy of Virginia is great. And one of the reasons it's great is because we have right to work laws, right? That's why people come in, start companies, and hire people. And the Democrats, number one thing they want to do is strip that out and make union membership compulsory rather than have it as a volunteer operation like it is now. And I got plenty of friends of mine that are in the trade unions in Virginia. A lot of them are my friends because I grew up in that world. My father was a union worker since he was 18 till the time he retired. But they join the unions because they want to, because the benefits are great, and they want to fight for their union, but they don't have to. How does your opponent campaign for getting rid of right to work when 65% of Virginians think the economy is great? How do they do that, Margaret?
Well, I think Democrats are using the same playbook that they've used for years. When facts get in the way, they go a different direction and change the subject. So my opponent has come out and said he would vote to, repeal right to work, but then he tries to avoid that and change the subject. It is mind-boggling. The number that you quoted in the poll of people being happy with the economy, that jives completely with what I'm hearing on the ground here in Henrico at doors. People are happy with the economy. They're happy with the area. So that, those things jive. But I just don't understand how they think that businesses will stay here under the notion of, repealing right to work. And workers who, again, as you said, want to have the choice whether to associate with a union or not, and not have that be a condition of employment. So that would take away choice of workers.
Right.
It would certainly drive a lot of business to North Carolina, which is very business friendly and has spent the last 10 years really making a lot of improvements in their business climate to attract businesses. And I think that puts a lot of our economic success at risk. The CNBC poll that came out earlier this year that, cited Virginia as the number one state to do business, reference right to work as one of the top reasons why. So yeah, I don't understand it. They do, again, when they tend to avoid the question when asked directly, but they are supported by my opponent included, by labor unions and others from out of state.
Mary Margaret Kastleberg, are you going to win this race?
I believe I am going to win this race. I believe it's going to be very, very, very close, which is why we are working round the clock to get the vote out. That is critical at this stage.
Mary Margaret, what's your website?
www.kastleberg, number 4, VA, KASTELBERG, number 4, VA.com.
Kastleberg4VA.com. Mary Margaret Kastleberg. Mary Margaret, thanks for being with us. And,
thank you.